Selamat pagi dan salam sejahtera saya ucapkan kepada Tuan Pengerusi Majlis, Barisan Hakim yang ada lagi bijaksana, rakan-rakan seperjuangan serta hadirin hadirat yang dimuliakan. Sebelum saya memulakan syarahan saya pada hari yang mulia ini, izinkan saya dari Tingkatan 4 Aristotle merakamkan ribuan terima kasih atas persediaan hadirin kepada saya untuk menyampaikan syarahan saya yang berjudul punca-punca yang menyebabkan kejahatan barangan tiruan membanjiri pasaran Malaysia. Para hadirin, dewasa kini kejahatan cetak rompak dan pengembaraan barangan tiruan jenama yang meleluasa di negara kita. Kejahatan cetak rompak merujuk kepada perbuatan melebihkan kaya penulisan lagu, filem tanpa kebenaran di pihak penciptanya atau pengeluarnya. Pengembaraan barangan tiruan jenama pula berkaitan dengan penghasilan suatu barang yang mirip dengan bentuk barang asalnya. Terdapat beberapa punca yang menyebabkan kejahatan ini berleluasa di negara kita. Hadirin yang sekalian, kejahatan ini, faktor utama yang menyebabkan kejahatan ini adalah sifat tamak haluba. Kejahatan ini mendatangkan keuntungan yang berlipat ganda. Sebagai contohnya, kasus MBC cetak rompak tidak sampai RM1 tapi dijual pada harga RM10. Tambahan pula, mereka juga menikmati barang esensialnya dari segi publicity dan iklan. Mereka juga tidak perlu membayar royalti kepada pihak pengusaha asal atau penjual asalnya. Oleh itu, kos pengeluaran yang rendah membolehkan mereka menikmati keuntungan yang besar. Hadirin yang sekalian, pelonggaran dalam penguasaan undang-undang juga menyebabkan kejahatan ini berlarutan. Akta hak intelek masih ada kelemahannya. Akta hak mereka cipta dan bentuk tidak dapat dikuatkan sepenuhnya. Hukuman yang ringan tidak dapat membuatkan usaha haram ini. Ini kerana denda yang ringan dapat ditebus dengan mudah mendanai keuntungan yang dikawal. Pembicaraan mahkamah juga mengambil masa yang lama. Pihak pengusaha haram juga sering berpindah-pindah untuk mengimbangkan sebuah pihak yang berkuasa. Para hadirin, permintaan yang tinggi terhadap barang sedemikian juga menyebabkan kejahatan ini berlarutan. Pengguna sanggup membeli barangan cetak rompak lantaran harganya yang murah. Ini dapat memenuhi cita rasa sebahagian golongan pengguna yang kurang mampu, tetapi ini menonjolkan diri. Produk perisian komputer seperti CD program Microsoft sebenarnya berharga RM1,200, tetapi dijual pada harga RM15 sahaja jika cetak rompak. Ini menunjukkan pengguna lebih suka memberi barangan cetak rompak. Hadirin yang dikasihi, kesimpulannya, kejahatan cetak rompak dan pengembaraan barangan tiruan jenama perlu dipanteras dengan giat. Orang ramai juga lah perlu bertimbang rasa dan elakkan membeli barang sedemikian. Mereka juga perlulah memberi kerjasama dengan menyampaikan maklumat ini kepada pihak yang berkuasa jika mereka bersesuai dengan masalah ini. Sekian, terima kasih.
Let me ask you, is China rising into the next world economic superpower, challenging America and the world? To provoke your thoughts, I'm going to pose you a number of ground-shaking questions. Do you know that China is the fastest major economy in the world? And do you know that China is the cause of the huge rise in oil and steel prices? And do you know that the world pours most money into China than anywhere else in the world? A very good afternoon, honorable judge, timekeepers, and all present. What I am going to talk about today may forever change your mind, not just of China's view, not just of China's place in the world, but of America's as well. China is the amazing story of how a sleeping dragon woke up and the world transformed itself into the greatest superpower of the very near future, with the greatest, tallest, longest, and fastest of just about everything there is in this world. China is now everywhere in the world, in the news, in the workplace, and in every trip to the store in every corner of the world. And this is influencing our lives as citizens, employees, and consumers. The words made in China are as universal as money. The nation sews more clothes and stitches more shoes and assembles more toys for the world's children than any other. China has also become the world's largest maker of consumer electronics, pumping up TVs, DVD players, and cell phones at a fraction of their cost. And more recently, China is ascending even higher still, moving quickly and expertly into biotech and computer manufacturing. Even a casual glimpse at the news tells us that something large looms in China. The nation is making Boeing parts for Boeing, exploring space, buying oil fields, gothic scrap metal, as well as fuel, and even IBM PC business. One big reason China is growing is because the world keeps feeding China with huge capital. It's where the world is investing. With money comes knowledge and infrastructure. Every day, China receives a river of Europeans, Asians, and American experts in manufacturing, banking, computing, advertising, and engineering. In infrastructure development, China is laying down fiber optics at a rapid rate. China now leapfrogs over many of the technologies of mature industrial nations. Its phone system is more wireless and wired, and its big cities will soon have the most advanced rapid transit systems in the world. Also, behind China's rapid economic growth is the basic fact of China's huge population. China is home to close to 1.5 billion people speaking one common language, Mandarin. And it has 160 cities with more than 1 million population each, as compared to just 9 in America and 36 in Europe. The other great influence lately will be the migration of some 300 million parents from the countryside to the cities, the largest human migration in history. This alone is double the workforce of 140 million in America. By year 2010, nearly half of all Chinese will live in urban areas. What these numbers mean is that the productive mind of China's vast low-cost manufacturing machine, along with the sweating appetite of its billion-plus consumers, has turned China's people into what is arguably the greatest natural resources on the planet. By every measure, China's economy is growing rapidly. In the last 3 decades, China's economy doubled nearly 3 times over, whereas it would take America 25 years to double. You now agree with me that no country has made a better run at climbing every economic development all at once. No country plays the world economic game better than China. No country shocked the global economic hierarchy like China. Hence, I conclude firmly that China will rise to be the next world economic superpower, challenging America and the world.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I'm sure you're all very familiar with the wonderful, magical world of Disney. Let's face it, for many generations, Disney has become the symbol of all that good, hope, and love. Disney has poised itself in the form of its theme parks as the symbol of joy and happiness of many children around the world. It is safe to assume that the entire generation Y has grown up watching Disney. What you don't know is that Disney is the most sick, vile organization that has ever walked this earth. Do you know what? Disney has committed numerous crimes against humanity, including, but not limited to, horrible animal cruelty, terrible sexual crimes, including displaying pornography to young children, falsifying scientific research, and last but not least, utilizing slave labor. Ladies and gentlemen, let me elaborate. I'm sure you're all familiar with the wonderful Disney movie, The Rescuers. It's a very good example of a holistic, lovely Disney movie. There's a wonderful plot, there's a magical storyline, the characters are memorable as always. What you don't know is, Disney used this movie as a vessel to convey sexual innuendo. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a scene in this movie when the characters Lady Bianca and Bernard are enjoying a lovely fly through the night sky, when suddenly there appears this image of a woman baring her stark, naked body to the audience. Let me ask you this: how can you say that a company that is so associates itself with all that is good and wholesome in the world, displays pornography to children in its movies. My God, no, Disney is not a paragon of good. Disney is sick and disgusting. What kind of retards would put pornography and show it to children in movie productions? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you all heard of the wonderful television sitcom Desperate Housewives. Who hasn't? I mean, it's about a bunch of women, some men, who have affairs, lie, cheat, steal, have sex, and then possibly have more sex. What you possibly don't know is that this movie is a Disney production. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask you, Disney, the company who associates itself with all that good, holistic joy, associating itself with something as demeaning as lying, cheating, and extramarital sex. What kind of image is Disney projecting to the youth of the world by showing these kind of images and by broadcasting this image to the public and people in general? You think that's bad, ladies and gentlemen? You know what? It gets even worse. I'm sure you all have this assumption that lemmings commit mass suicide. You know what? Lemmings don't commit mass suicide. The only reason the scientific community believes that lemmings commit mass suicide is because of research done by Disney. Instead of studying their natural behavior, in the name of American dollars, Disney proceeded to capture lemmings and then have them hurled off cliffs so they could film them committing mass suicide, when it was actually Disney filmmakers putting the lemmings on rotating tables and having them spun off the cliffs in magnificent manner that made it look like the lemmings were committing mass suicide. What kind of decent company would do such a horrible, decrepit thing? Ladies and gentlemen, I end my speech with this. To you, Walt Disney, you sick man, if this ever reaches your ears in hell, I hope you burn. Your company is sick, vile, and disgusting. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you, which country is rising to the next world superpower, economic superpower of the near future challenging the world? To provoke your thoughts, I'm going to pose you a number of ground-shaking questions. Do you know which country is the fastest growing major economy in the world? And do you know which country caused the huge rise in oil and steel prices? And do you know which country that the world pours most money in to invest than any other country in the world? Ladies and gentlemen, in your mind, I bet the answer is America. But you are all wrong. Believe it or not, the answer is China. A very good morning, honorable judges, timekeepers, technicians, and all present. What I am going to talk about today requires a change of view, not just of China's place in the world, but of America's as well. China is an amazing story to tell. It is a story of how a sleeping dragon woke up and awoke, transformed itself into the greatest superpower of the very near future, with the greatest, tallest, longest, and fastest of just about everything there is in the world. China today is everywhere in the world. In the news, in the workplace, and in every trip to the store in every corner of the world. And this is influencing us as consumers, employees, and citizens. The words made in China are as universal as money. The nation sews more clothes and stitches more shoes and assembles more toys for the world's children than any other. China is also the largest maker of consumer electronics, pumping out more TVs, DVD players, and cell phones than any other country at the fraction of the cost. And more recently, China is ascending even higher still, moving quickly and expertly into biotech and computer manufacturing. Even a casual glimpse at the news tells us there's something large to lose in China. The nation is playing Boeing puzzle Boeing, exploring space, buying oil fields, gobbling scrap metal, as well as steel, and even IBM business. One big reason China is growing is because the world keeps feeding China with huge that involve Asians, Europeans, and American experts in banking, computing, manufacturing, advertising, and engineering. In infrastructure development, China is laying down fiber optic at a rapid rate. China now leapfrogs over many of the technologies of mature industrial nations. Also, behind China's rapid economic growth is the basic fact of China's huge population. China is home to close to 1.5 billion people, speaking one common language, Mandarin, with 160 cities with more than 1 million population each. Another great influence will be the migration of some 300 million peasants from the countryside to the cities, the largest human migration in history. This alone is double the workforce of 140 million in America. By year 2010, nearly half of all Chinese will live in urban areas. What this number means is that the productive mind of China's low-cost manufacturing machine, with its swelling appetite of its billion-plus consumers, has turned China's people into what is arguably the largest, greatest natural resource on the planet. Hence, I conclude that China will rise into the next world economic superpower, challenging America and the world. Thank you.
Or Aristotle.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I'm sure you've all heard of the wonderful, magical, mystical world of Walt Disney. Of course you have. Imagine. Throughout the world, Disney has inspired children for generations with enthralling storytelling and dazzling cinematography. For years, their theme parks have served joy and amusement. Their characters so unique and utterly memorable. They've certainly made a mark in our hearts. Disney is famous, or rather infamous, for consistently releasing movies, particularly cartoons, of considerable effort and budget. And I'm sure there was a time or another a Disney movie touched your heart. Well, you know what? You're all wrong. Completely, utterly wrong. Disney isn't a paragon of good. My God, no! Open your eyes, ladies and gentlemen. Disney has committed multitudes of crimes against humanity, including, but not limited to, displaying pornography to children, propagating sexual deviancy, and encouraging free sex among minors. What kind of values are this? Plus, the messages that Disney presents in its movies are tailored for controlling the masses, preaching reliance on divination and magic. This is all behavior that's quite reminiscent of cult circuit living. But how can this be? I hear you all echo in your hearts. I'll tell you. Ladies and gents, The Rescuers, a lovely movie altogether. But if you would take the time to examine it closely enough, you see something of the basement of Disney history. There's a scene within this movie where Lady Bianca and Bernard are flying through the night sky, where for a precious few seconds, a woman appears by the window bearing her breast full on to the camera, bearing her big, jiggly, bouncy breast. Now, children watch these films, I ask you, what kind of values are you teaching to them? Speaking of pornography, in the infamous movie, Roger Rabbit, there's a scene where Jessica is riding through town with Bob Hopkins in an animated taxi. The taxi runs into a lamp, and through a throne from the car, Jessica falls around from the momentum, which just happens to make her skirt rise. Now, for a precious 4 frames, you can see her underwear magically disappearing. That's right, you can see what clearly appears to be her cleanly shaven genitals. Another instance of Disney's basement in their wonderful film, The Little Mermaid. Parents who purchased the home video were quite taken back to see what looked like a pretty damn good rendition of what appeared to be a large penis on the front cover. A large, shiny penis on the cover of a children's video. Even
even worse, this disgusting crime has given life in the shape of a toy. Children all over the world have bought these toys, and they have played with them. Imagine the sick, sordid things they could get up to with these things. In conclusion, the happiness and wonder of Disney is all a filthy cover-up. Not many people know of the atrocities that go on inside their institutions. And to the despicable Prince Walt Disney, if this speech ever reaches your ears in hell, you are a sick, sick man. Thank you.
They are Bronzy Key as the Prime Minister, Jonathan Teo as the Deputy Prime Minister, and Rachel Wong as the Government Whip. On the opposition team, we have Iman Effendi as the Opposition Leader, Mokhtar Shem as the Deputy Opposition Minister, and Matthew Pang as the Opposition Whip. Without further delay, let us begin the debate. Without further delay, let us begin the debate. I now call upon the first speaker from the government to present his speech.
Good afternoon, honorable judges, esteemed members, and everyone present today. Our debate topic will be this house achieves education to raise combat. The definition of sexual harassment is a growing problem that can undermine the effectiveness of schooling education for boys and girls, men and women alike. This issue complicated because of the uncertainty about what constitutes sexual harassment. The differing views of individual men and women are the unique characteristics of each case. Education can be divided into many groups, but mainly two: formal and informal. The definition of formal that it takes place in education and training institutions leading to regional diplomas and qualifications. The definition of informal is a natural accompaniment to everyday life. Informal learning doesn't have to be intentional learning, and so might not be recognized, even by individuals themselves. Contributing to their knowledge and skills. Sexual harassment not only is bad, but it also is not only bad for law, but it's also bad for school, religious, and moral. In this cases your God and religion and means down the moral value, self-esteem, and self-respect. It's also mainly against religion as well. One form of formal education is counseling. It helps relieve stress and solve problems mentally and physically. Sometimes sexual harassment happens because of stress and problems at work. All this sometimes can be solved because of counseling. Why do people
Point, sir.
Why do people speak about sexual harassment, you ask? Maybe it's because they have a fear of being the subject of rumors, fear of being labeled oversensitive, or fear of not being believed, or mainly because they fear of being wrong. Another form of education is martial arts. It's a form of self-defense. Both people often forget that martial arts is a form of informal education. But another few important notes that you need to know.
Point, sir.
Sexual harassment can be offensive behavior in the eye of the beholder. Displays, affection, remarks, or other action. Sexual harassment is a form of violence no matter where it happens in the world or at home. And remember that women do not need to be sexually harassed as women do not to be raped. Unfortunately, there are still many in society who accept the myth that women invite sexual harassment by their manner or dressing or behavior. Such perceptions may influence not only the
Point, sir.
harasser.
We're not contesting that sexual harassment is a bad thing. How are you showing us that education is the way to combat this?
Because education is always indirectly related. Somehow. Can I continue? loss of job opportunities, getting fired, and rejection by co-workers and humiliation. And please keep in mind that harassment does not have to be directed at a particular individual. Offenders can be supervisors, co-workers, non-employees, students, customers, vendors, suppliers, basically anybody. Lastly, organizations such as the National Organization for Women Otherwise, such as SKDU now, help to educate the public further on sexual harassment through campaigns, seminars, and programs. Allow me to start by giving a few examples. Of sexual harassment. The US Mint recently forked out a astounding $9 million to cover sexual harassment cases. The female employees that alleged that boss demanded sex in terms of relationship and punished them when they complained. Another case of sexual harassment, the Mitsubishi management was sued for mishandling hundreds of sexual and racial harassment allegations.
That was a wonderful speech. I shall now call upon the first speaker from the opposition to present her speech.
Good morning, members of the floor. We as the negative team oppose the motion of the day, which is this House believes that sexual harassment is the best way to combat that education is the best way to combat sexual harassment. We propose to criminalize all actions that outrage the modesty of any member of a given society. We propose that the House shall pass these laws and ensure that they are enforced. Thus, legislation is needed, and the enforcement therein is what the opposition contends is the primary means by which sexual harassment can be controlled. As the first speaker of the opposition, I will highlight all the flaws in the government's case and completely rebut any mistaken conclusions that they might have drawn. I will also present our first contention, which is education is insufficient to combat sexual harassment. Our second speaker will be presenting our second contention, which is legislation is the more effective and most viable method to combat sexual harassment. He will also continue to expose the weaknesses in the government's arguments and will prove that we, the opposition, are presenting a self-evident case. Our opposition whip shall defend and reinforce our stand. I believe that the government has failed to set the parameters for the debate, therefore we shall set the parameters. And we have also rejected the definition of sexual harassment, which I believe is a growing problem which undermines something about students. And we would like to replace, and we would also like to reject their definition of education. This debate is hereby restricted to the following parameters. The debate should only consider education as teaching and learning which occurs in the upper secondary section of school in the form of classes conducted by a trained professional. We will also consider sexual harassment as conscious, inappropriate behavior involving two or more people that is sexual in nature. This debate shall only consider sexual harassment and education in relation. I believe that the Prime Minister was talking about why sexual harassment is bad. He has failed to fulfill his burden of proof that education is the best way to combat sexual harassment. It is not the government's duty to set the burden of proof on us. According to the definition, the government has to prove that education is the best way to combat sexual harassment. By no account does education instill these values. It does not change a person's personal values. It does not alter behavior. As we had defined sexual harassment as behavior, sexual harassment is not a crime of ignorance. Sexual harassment is a conscious and active decision to behave in a certain way. Since sexual harassment is a conscious action of behavior, and since education does not alter behavior, we can conclude that no, education is not the way to practice, that not the way to combat sexual harassment. In a survey conducted by researchers at University of Malaya, published in a thesis by Dr. Conrad, it has been shown that over 83.37% of sexual harassment cases occur in a corporate environment. In addition to that, over 73.92% of these crimes occur in upper level management. Aren't people working in companies educated? Don't you have to have certain academic qualifications to work in a corporate firm? So if they're educated, why do sexual harassment cases still occur in the workplace? So obviously, ladies and gentlemen, education is simply not the answer to prevent sexual harassment. The answer, legislation, as the second opposition minister will elaborate later on. Ladies and gentlemen, I have proven to you that education simply is not the answer. Given that, how can the motion for today possibly stand? This is why the opposition stands resolved that education is not the way to combat sexual harassment.
I shall now call upon the second speaker from the government to present his speech.
Good to everyone and honorable judges. We here believe that this house believes that education is the way to combat sexual harassment. There are actually many ways to educate people about sexual harassment. It doesn't have to be through school. It could be in the form of informal education. For example, campaigns. Campaigns help people to understand sexual harassment in an informal way. And because campaigns are easily held, campaigns are frequent, so more people will learn about sexual harassment. And let's not forget about the media. Education can be spread through the media like magazines, computer, internet, TV, and many more. And since the generation today does all of this above, we could educate them easily. Many people that have been sexually harassed have written many books about the experience and the action that they took to fight it. For example, the first book on sexual harassment, Unbearable Intimacy, by Margaret A. Crouch. These types of books could be a guide to educate people about okay. Instead of saying if they are going through what the authors were going through before, if everyone knows what to do, it will eventually stop. Since the topic of sexual harassment is very common, people educate their friends about it unintentionally. When they talk about what they read in newspapers about sexual harassment, they will tell their friends about the story and what they did, and their friends will pass it on so more and more people will know about it. Sexual harassment generally occurs when there is a disparity of power, not just when men and women. No, Jack. When men and women are working together. And sexual harassment doesn't have to be intentional, and sexual harassment is not necessarily physical, but it could be in the form of emotional, mental, and verbal. There's no liability for unknown harassment if the employer had a proper complaint procedure and communicated disapproval of harassment to employees and workers.
Point, sir.
Yeah. How could the public know of this if they were not informed, not educated? If no one was educated about sexual harassment, how would they know that they were being sexually harassed in any type of way? Or that they were sexually harassed someone? Education will develop a clear understanding of what sexual harassment and how it impacts the learning and work environment. Jean Copper, PhD, who does studies on sexual harassment, quoted, you can educate yourself, and we read that. You can educate yourself because talking to the people who are being sexually harassed. Education will develop an understanding of the responsibilities of an individual for maintaining an environment free from sex discrimination. We should have our rights to speak out, but first we have to know our rights. Before I have a speech, I I hope that I managed to convince you all the ways to combat sexual harassment. Another case of sexual harassment is the Mitsubishi management was sued for mishandling hundreds of sexual and racial harassment allegations. How do you think victims knew what action to take after being suspected harassed? Through education, of course. This education would also teach bosses a lesson or two about the consequences of sexual harassment. Official website for now, and just paying attendance. Instead of being ordered not to do it, if people are just told not to do it, they will just become curious and thus increase the rate of sexual harassment. Whereas a very important form of formal education about sexual harassment, you can learn from their experiences and learn how to apply ourselves from this sexually harassed individual.
Without wasting any time, I shall now call upon the second speaker from the opposition to present the bill.
Ladies and gentlemen, education is not the way to effectively combat sexual harassment, as my first speaker has so capably presented. So what is the way to combat sexual harassment? Our answer, ladies and gentlemen, is legislation. Good afternoon to the members of the floor. I, as the second speaker of the opposition, firmly oppose today's motion of education is the way to combat sexual harassment. To support my stand, I should present to you my contention that legislation and enforcement is the more effective and most viable method to combat sexual harassment. But first, I should rebut the points brought forward by the second government speaker. He said that in his definitions, when he was talking about education, he included informal education such as campaigns and so on. We put the parameters, specifically set the parameters as an education in secondary school. We put the parameters and you didn't say anything about it. Therefore, it is admission by omission. And next, he also said in one of his points that people need to be educated to realize they are being sexually harassed. You're not talking about how to combat sexual harassment. You are talking about how you can realize you're being sexually harassed. If somebody puts a hand in your butt, do you realize? You of course realize you're being sexually harassed. Maybe you can learn how that you're being sexually harassed. But how do you combat it? You just let that person go on putting their hand on your butt. So now I should go on with my first contention. My main point is legislation and enforcement is the more effective and most viable way to combat sexual harassment. Now my first sub-point. Education doesn't set boundaries. It doesn't provide a concrete construct of what is right and what is wrong. But legislation does. Laws provide a concrete construct. Legislation will set a standard and establish the boundaries for what acceptable behavior is and what isn't acceptable. Yes, that's it.
You say that law puts a boundary, but then if law puts a boundary on things, why do people rape and why do people kill? You still go to jail in the end now.
Okay, I'll rebut that in my second sub-point. Okay. Laws provide a concrete construct. As my first speaker showed you earlier, the majority of sexual harassment cases occur in the workplace. In fact, many of these sexual harassment offenders are qualified professionals in positions of power. Obviously, these people are educated. Otherwise, how do you get into that position of power? But what does that tell you about education? Is this insufficient? So what is the best method to combat sexual harassment? Our answer? Legislation. Legislation will ensure that law enforcers have an authoritative method for investigating complaints and taking action. Let me give you an example. For example, when you go to driving school, number 1, you learn not to go through a red light. Number 2, you learn not to cut through. Number 3, you learn not to use your mobile phone. Do you do that? No. So, then what does it show? You don't listen to them. So, how exactly does that show that education will help in any way to combat sexual harassment? Well, on the other hand, if the same drivers are the same vicinity, any spots, sunny spots, a traffic cop. Now, what would they do? They would switch off their handphones, they would get out, they would do not cut the lines, and they would stop at a red light. What does that show? Legislation can effectively control people's wild behaviors. Now, my second sub-point, which I which I will use to rebut the first speaker's POI just now. Education may create some form of awareness. However, awareness doesn't deter action. You do something wrong, you feel guilty, that's all. Whereas by legislation, you ultimately is a better deterrent than your conscience. Analogy, I'll give you a small analogy. What rape does happen? People who commit these crimes are ultimately dealt with. There is an entire judicial system to effectively combat this. But there is nothing for sexual harassment. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to sum up my point by saying that laws need to be put in place. We need people to feel secure and immediate offenders to be punished. Thank you.
I shall now call upon the rebuttal speech from the government.
Good afternoon to everyone here. I believe that what the opposing team said that legislation is better than education. But how many times have we heard stories that go something like this? A mother comes home to find her little girl playing with matches. The mother does not explain to the little girl why playing with matches is dangerous and just takes it away from her. Okay? 2 months later, the house is burned down. Why do all these stories all show us that education is better than legislation? People don't just follow rules directly without knowing what the rules are for. If you don't explain stuff to them, they'll just be more curious and thus create the rate of sexual harassment. People need to understand what sexual harassment is. People don't just go following people without knowing what it is. Okay. I believe our topic today here is not only about education in Malaysia, but education in other countries as well. What they talked about is only about education in Malaysia, but other countries they do teach about sexual harassment.
Point man.
No. But okay, legislation is not the best way because legislation is a form of forcing people not to do things. Education, however, is giving people the free will to choose what they want to do. If you educate them enough, they will come to their senses and they will realize that education is really the best way to overcome sexual harassment. You said that something about somebody touching your butt, that's how you realize that you're being sexually harassed. Well, sexual harassment is not always so direct. Sexual harassment can always come in the form of sexist jokes or people just looking at you like inappropriately.
Point man. Now I'm talking about touching your butt. I wasn't talking about your butt. I was saying in the sense that it is a way of sexually harassment. I'm saying it's a method of sexual harassment.
Yes,
I'm not talking about that it's an example. It is not full sexual harassment.
Yes, but you said that people will know that they're being sexually harassed when they're sexually harassed. But I'm saying that sometimes people don't realize that they're being sexually harassed. So how are they supposed to combat that? And yeah. Thank you.
Exactly.
Shall now call upon the rebuttal speech from the opposition team.
Ladies and gentlemen, members of the floor, good afternoon to you. First, let me address a concern I had with the POI. When I POI the government team and asked them how they were contesting the motion that education is better than sexual harassment, apparently all the response I got that is somehow indirectly related. Ladies and gentlemen, let me present the government's case to you and rebut their points one by one. The first speaker talked about why sexual harassment is bad and how it is somehow indirectly related to education. Ladies and gentlemen, we are not saying that sexual harassment is a bad thing. The issue or debate, the status quo or the crux of this debate is whether education or legislation is a better way to combat sexual harassment. We are not saying that sexual harassment is a bad thing. We are simply standing that legislation is a better way to combat sexual harassment. In their second point, they mentioned informal education and the workplace. Ladies and gentlemen, that is clearly outside the parameters of this debate. When we set the parameters of this debate, we clearly stated that education was restricted to upper secondary schools in Malaysia. Ladies and gentlemen, they did not reject our parameters, so it goes to show that our parameters stand, and that their argument is effectively thrown out because they were arguing outside the parameters of this debate. Ladies and gentlemen, the opposition case consists of two main constructs. Our first construct is that education is insufficient. Our second construct is that legislation is the better way. The only rebuttal that the government came up with this is to say that legislation was forcing us to do the right thing. Here, do the right thing. Ladies and gentlemen, don't you think that doing the right thing is the most important thing, whether or not you're forcing them? Second, they went back and forth about the realization that you're being sexually harassed. And then, specifically, she said that some people who feel hands on their butts don't think they're being sexually harassed. Ladies and gentlemen, I assure you, if any logical, sane human being found a stranger putting their hand on his or her butt, I assure you, they would recognize that it was sexual harassment. Ladies and gentlemen, how can the government get started if they have failed to clash with our points properly? Our arguments flow through this debate simply because the government has completely failed to successfully clash with our points. We, on the other hand, have completely clashed with all the government points, which, might I remind you, are outside the parameters of this debate. So anyway, we the opposition rest that sexual harassment is the most legislation is the most effective way to combat sexual harassment. Let me take you through our key arguments one more time. Our first argument is that legislation is the most effective way. That education was ineffective. Why is education ineffective? Well, simply because education is fact-based and knowledge-based, and sexual harassment is behavior. You cannot change behavior by sending somebody to school. Ladies and gentlemen, if the CEO sexually harassed somebody, are you going to send him to class or are you going to send him to jail? Let me ask you that question. Our second contention is that legislation is by far more denied. That legislation is by far more effective. Ladies and gentlemen, legislation is the law. It sets up viable constructs and solid boundaries for what is right and wrong. Sexual harassment is wrong, therefore people will learn not to do it. Hence, the opposition rests that legislation is by far the better way to combat sexual harassment.
That was a great speech. I shall now call upon the wrap-up speaker from the opposition.
Good morning, members of the board. Good afternoon. I would like to just show to you all the key clash points in this debate. Firstly, the Prime Minister of the government, in his speech, he failed to prove why education is a better way to combat sexual harassment. And in my speech, I did prove that education is not the way to combat sexual harassment. He was merely talking about why sexual harassment is bad. And the second speaker of the government, he was talking about education in the form of campaigns, informal education. We had restricted this debate to education in the form of classes conducted in upper secondary of schools in Malaysia. They did not reject our parameters, therefore whatever they said is immediately thrown out of this debate. And then he said that people need to be educated to realize that they are being sexually harassed. You mean to tell me that if you know how to identify when someone's sexually harassing you, that immediately combats sexual harassment? Education does not guarantee that you can combat sexual harassment. Just because you know that something is bad doesn't mean that it will be eliminated. My second speaker of the opposition, fulfilled our burden of clash by showing you why education is bad and also proposed a better method of combating sexual harassment, which is legislation. And in the third speaker of the government, she said that she talked about something about matches and some little girl who burned the house down. But and society does not have to be so extreme. You think that it's not effective to punish them straight away. We're not saying punish them straight away. That is why you're giving warnings, notices. You're giving fines. You're giving all of these things, giving chances before it escalates into imprisonment. It is not that extreme. To sum it up, we have fulfilled our burden of clash, and they have not fulfilled their burden of proof. Therefore, the motion today does not stand, and we, the opposition, can stand firmly resolved that education is not the way to combat sexual harassment, but legislation is.
I shall now call upon the wrap-up speakers of the government.
I'm confident that this House can convince everyone that sexual harassment is only way to fight. Sexual harassment is a very common offense which should be taken seriously. And just now you said that warnings. Okay, let's say the electric, they give you warnings every month. Does anyone pay? All the bills, they give you warnings. Does anyone pay? Not pay. The point is, you are not educating the public, but you're forcing the public that what they're doing is wrong. They don't know what they're doing is wrong. You're just telling them that it's wrong. Because there are so many ways to educate the number of sexual abuse increase in register. It's just by living their normal life. Like they switch on television to see a commercial of sexual harassment, or by reading newspaper that has an article about it. There's no other way to combat this. Everyone was punished without knowledge and reason why. They will keep doing it and they do not feel like they have done anything wrong. They have to be taught about moral values and they should know their consequences. People should be taught to speak, work together to combat sexual harassment. People should be taught to speak up. Being sexual harassed should not be ashamed of what they have gone through because this information will help educate others. Organizing such as NLW, the National Organization of help further educate the public about sexual harassment. Many people forget that there's a different side of education, the informal side. Parents are very important to teachers things that no one else cares about sexual harassment. Teachers are always ready to educate their students. Counselors are always working close with problems. With all these people ready to educate us and help us with our problems, why isn't education the only way? Education has solved many problems. One country doesn't feel any different. Violence, no matter where it is, the home or in the workplace, is a matter of public interest and must be eradicated. So everything up this house is really 100% believe that education is the only way to combat sexual harassment.
Thank you for your interesting speeches. Let us await the judges' decision now.
but it was quite difficult to say what actually happened at this stage. Basically, for the government, believe that you have failed to prove why education is the way to combat sexual harassment. I think there was no dispute that this debate that sexual harassment is a bad thing. But in your case, it was not strongly stated how education successfully can combat sexual harassment. And I believe the second speaker also contradicted himself by saying that awareness creates more curiosity and therefore people will want to try. Okay. And there seems to be some difficulty on the government side to follow how an all-Asian debate goes. So that needs to be addressed because you fail to set the definition, the parameters, and what is the proposal for the motion policy. On the opposition side, you did reject the definition, but no reason was given as to why you rejected. And when you came out with the proposal, that actually affects how you came up with that proposal. However, you managed to show why education cannot combat sexual harassment and also came up with a proposal to the legislation, and that's why the bill has to be done. Thank you very much.
First of all, let me introduce the members of the government team. They are Iman Effendi as the Prime Minister, Mok Kalshan as the Deputy Prime Minister, Matthew Pang as the government leader. On the opposition team, we have Sarina Low as the opposition leader, Najwa Amira as the Deputy Opposition Minister, and Jackson Lee as the opposition leader. Without further delay, let us begin the debate. I shall now call upon the first speaker from the government to present the motion.
Good afternoon, members of the floor. The motion for today is education is the best way to combat sexual harassment. However, we the government feel that the motion today is an apparent waste of time. As such, we the government shall change the motion for today to this House believes that masturbation is better than sex. I, as the first speaker of the government, will present our first contention, which is masturbation is more beneficial to health than sex. Our second speaker will highlight all the flaws in the opposition's case and completely rebut any mistaken conclusions they might draw. Our second speaker will also present our second contention, which is masturbation is safer than sex. Our third speaker shall defend and reinforce our stance. We define the key terms in this motion as masturbation is the manual excitation of the sexual organs to the point of orgasm that brings out a pure, undiluted form of pleasure and ecstasy. Better than is defined as more advantageous. Sex is defined as sexual intercourse between two humans of opposite sex. This debate is hereby restricted to the following parameters. This debate shall only consider sex in the form of sexual intercourse between two married humans of the opposite sex. This debate shall only consider masturbation as the manual excitation of sexual organs to the point of orgasm. Masturbation may involve one or more people, such as mutual masturbation. Now on to our first contention, which is masturbation is more beneficial to health than sex. Masturbation is an ever-renewable health resource. Many medical professionals and sexual health authorities have reported that solo sex for one, self-loving and self-pleasuring can be beneficial to one's physical, emotional and sexual health, and the health of one's relationship. They have demonstrated that arousal and orgasm from masturbation may reduce stress, release sexual tension, serve as a form of safer sexual activity that eliminates the risk of sexually transmitted infections and unintended pregnancy, alleviate premenstrual tension for many women, induce sleep, indirectly prevent disease, build up resistance to infections by increasing the flow of white blood cells and rejuvenating the circulation of hormones, stimulate endorphin production, allowing better oxygen metabolism and more efficient cell functioning throughout the body. For men, masturbation is good for the prostate and can prevent painful prostate blockage. For women, it can help reduce cramping for both men and women, has been shown to have a healthy effect on the immune system as well as reducing overall tension and helping emotions. People who have positive feelings about their bodies, sex and masturbation are more likely to be able to protect themselves against sexually transmitted infections, unintended pregnancy and sexual abuse. One of the most important ways we learn about sexuality is through masturbation. We all have a natural desire to learn about our bodies. It enhances our physical, mental and sexual health. By increasing our awareness of our sexual preferences, capabilities and personal limits, masturbation may equip us to make better or more responsible sexual choices for ourselves. Masturbation in no way jeopardizes the health of an individual. In fact, it actually provides the many previously stated benefits. On the other hand, sex exposes you to many health risks, as the second speaker will explain. It is clear that masturbation is in fact better than sex because it provides many health benefits without the risks of sex. This is why the government stands firmly resolved that masturbation is better than sex.
I'm sorry, this House cannot accept the change of motion without valid reason. Hereby disqualify all please. Thank you very much.
He's forever losing a stocking or shoe, and he starts to notice things that you do. Is that what you're thinking? Is that what you see? Then open your eyes. You're not looking at me. I'll tell you who I am as I sit here so still, as I move at your bidding, as I eat at your will. I'm a young girl of 10, who father and mother, brothers and sisters who love her. A young girl of 16 with wings on her,
Open
hoping that
it.
soon
Take off the
that she
face.
never should.
What? Take off the
Rise
face.
in my heart is aching, remembering the vows I promised to keep. At 25, I am young on my own. You need me to build a secure goal. At 35, my young now grow fast. Bound together, my ties that should last. At 40, my young son will soon all be born. But my man stays beside me to see that I know more. At 50, once more babies live on 19. And again, we know about my children, my loved ones, and me. God lives upon me. My husband, this day, I look at the future and I shudder into from my younger old with younger girl. I remember the joys, I remember the pain, loving and living life all over again. I'm an old woman now, and nature is cruel. This suggests to make old age look like a fool. There's a stone where I once had a heart, but inside this old carcass, a young girl still goes, and once and again, my battered heart swells. So, what do you see? Are you thinking when you're looking at me? A crabby old woman? Not very wise? Well, then open your eyes. You're not looking at me. Look closer. See? Thank you.
You would like a decent meal. You ran a knock on Grandma's door. When Grandma opened it, she saw a pouring rain. And Whoopi said,
May I come in?
Grandma was terrified.
He's going to eat me up.
She cried. And she was absolutely right. He ate her up in one big bite. Grandmama was small and tough, and Whoopi knew.
That's not enough. I haven't yet begun to feel that I have had a decent meal.
Ran around the kitchen yelling.
I've got to have another helping.
Then Anna with a frightful leer.
I'm never going to wait right here till this week's Red Riding Hood comes home from walking in the woods.
He put on Grandma's clothes. Of course he hadn't even known. He dressed himself in coat and hat and put on shoes, and after that he even brushed and combed his hair and set himself in Grandma's chair. In came the little golden ring. She saw, she stared, and then she said, "Oh, Grandma, what big ears you have!"
All the better to hear you with.
"Why, Grandma, what big eyes you have!"
All the better to see you with.
Sat there watching her and smiled. He thought, "I'm going to eat this child." Her everything told Grandmama she's going to taste like caviar. But Grandma, what do you think? Something so important have.
That's wrong. Have you forgot to tell me what big teeth I got? Oh well, no matter what you say, I'm going to eat you anyway.
Small girl smiled. One eyelid flickered. She raked some crystal from her fingers. She aimed it at the creature's head. And bang, bang, bang! She shoots it there.
You reach later in the woods.
I came around in Riding Hood. What a change, no golden ring, no silly hood upon her head. She said, "Hello, and please do not mind the big curly coats below."
Please welcome Daryl from 4 Aristotle Class 3.
Hello everyone, you want to rock the house tonight? One, two, three, four.
I wanna go through this life without you by my side, and I got it all worked out in my head. It's how it's got to be. It'll be you and me up in the trees, and the forest will give us the answer.
Bawah. Sexy dancing man. Kalchen for president. Not a very flattering dress. Slowly go for 40% now. You guys rock, man! They give you ikan jas, you belasah only. That's what I do.
Hey, Shannon, do well, man. Hey,
This is the Korean style band. I'm here. His name is Daryl. He's Lisa. He's Alvin. I'm Alex. Guys, you sing along with me, right? We're doing Ghostbusters. guys are singing out of the individual justice.
something about
Alex, your tongue, man, your tongue.
Thank you. Last time we learned talking goes fastest first, now goes fastest English. It's embarrassing.
Alex, does it taste nice? Does it taste nice?
Tastes great. What did you do? Ice cream. What did you do? Bang it or something. You bang it, right? I want to bang it. What's it like?
You're shaking your hand, man.
Woo! Back up. I'm there. Bye.
Gold medal goes to 4 Mozart. Silver medal goes to secondary 4 Aristotle. Satisfaction. Students, please give them a big hand. Our silver medalist for Aristotle. Bronze medal goes to secondary 3 Aristotle. Okay, let me repeat. Group singing category B. Gold medal goes to secondary 3 Dinka. Silver medal goes to secondary 4 Aristotle. Satisfaction. Bronze medal goes to secondary 3 Mozart. For choral speaking category A, competition category A. Gold medal goes to secondary 2 Edison. Mandarin debate. Gold medal goes to secondary 4 Aristotle. Silver medal goes to secondary 3 Columbus. And bronze medal, secondary 3 Wordsworth.
We got gold! We got gold!
For grand competition category B, there is no more excitement. Gold medal goes to secondary 4 Aristotle. category B, melody. Is this the last slide? Okay. Gold medal goes to Nurhana 5 Aristotle. Silver medal goes to Alexander Tang, 4 Aristotle. And bronze medal goes to Yang Yi Tang, 4 Mozart. Thank you, Miss Helen Thomas. Thank you very much. Okay. Best costume goes to Secondary 5 Mozart. Okay, please do not delay our award presentation session. Please come up on stage and receive individual awards. All the dancers. 高中组 Category B 最佳辩论员邱淑安 for Aristotle. Now it's time to present the Best Actor/Actresses Award. Tremendous potential in singing for all the singing events, okay, including band, solo, duet, and group singing. For Best Guitarist Award, Category A, the winner is Si Jun Yang. For Category B, Best Guitarist. Wow. Do you like this one or that one? Best Guitarist Category B, Alexander Tang for Aristotle. Okay, now it's my pleasure to announce the winner for Best Drama. Category A. The winner is Jeffrey! Okay, Best Drama for Category B. The winner is Aluna! Okay. Last 2 awards. After this, you can go home. Best Vocalist. Best Vocalist for Category A. The winner is Catherine! Catherine is the gold medalist for English solo singing competition. Okay, last but not least, Best Vocalist Category B. From Mozart, Tan Chin Yang. Tan Chin Yang is the gold medalist for Mandarin solo singing competition. Thank you, Mrs. Chan. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, students and teachers. Thank you.